What's up, everyone, and welcome back to our 2018 MLB Preview. It's Preston here. I'm joined by Josh again, and today we're covering the AL and NL Central. Let's get into it.
All right, so as you may remember, we're working from the bottom of last year's standings and on our way up. So we're starting in the American League with the Detroit Tigers. Preston, this team really is going to struggle this year. And for Tigers fans, this is pretty sad because they were used to running the AL Central, and it is not like that anymore. In fact, this team is probably looking to be at the very bottom of the AL Central. It's unfortunate how far they've fallen. The good news is for Tigers fans, they still have Miggy Cabrera. They've got V-Mart. They have Nick Castellanos. I mean, there's really nobody else there. And their pitching rotation's weak. You know, Fulmer, Zimmerman, Fires posted 522 last year, so hopefully he can improve on that and be a good guy for them. Nobody stands out on this team besides Miggy now, and even he's getting old. I'd like to see them do well. I don't even think their farm system's that great, which is really unfortunate, and they're off by a lot probably. I'd expect them to stay at the bottom of the AL Central for quite some time with the Royals, so they could have a nice little battle from 4th and 5th.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the battle that Tigers fans would be looking for, but I completely agree with you. This team is torn apart. That's my first thought when I saw this team. I see this roster, I'm like, wow, fire sale. It's literally Michael Fulmer and Miggy. That's it. Like, that's the whole team.
Yep.
V-Mart, a great player in his prime. He's past it. Miggy, even though he's getting older, he'll still put up Miggy-like numbers. But I completely agree. This team it's a two-player team at this point. Tigers fans need something to look forward to for the season. I mean, this is going to be a brutal season for them. And I just wonder, what are they going to do? This farm system, like you said, it's not very improved. One person I do like it is Alex Vallejo, someone that they drafted last year, a pitcher out of Florida. I think that he has really good stuff to be a top-of-the-line starter later down the road. But that's, like I said, later down the road. And this team right now has no future beyond Michael Fulmer, I'd say, because it's not like Miggy's going to last much longer. V-Mart's about to be gone. Leonis Martin is a stopgap in center. Jose Iglesias is a good shortstop, but he's older too. I mean, this team is very barren. It's going to be an interesting season for them. I'm not expecting much for Tigers fans. I'm sorry, y'all. It's been a good run, though. I mean, Miggy's had some great years in Detroit. It's just unfortunate this is going to be, like you said, a battle for last place between them and the Royals, I would assume. But as we move on to the Royals, we're going to move on to the White Sox. So The White Sox, I skipped ahead there because I actually like this White Sox team. I love their prospects, and let's be clear here. These are not prospects as in like, oh, let's look forward 3 or 4 years down the road prospects. These are guys that can step in and dominate. I'm expecting big things from Yohan Moncada, who coming in from Cuba was, billed as this huge talent when he signed with the Red Sox. And this is his first year to really get his feet under him and really, take over that White Sox team. I expect him to come in and post up a good season. Now, the White Sox are still a couple years away, so they're not going to be, a team that competes. But the AL Central is pretty weak. I think you'd agree on that.
Absolutely. This division right now is close to being the weakest in baseball. Fortunately, there are two teams holding it up. I think the White Sox are ahead on rebuilding compared to the Royals and the Tigers. They have Jose Abreu, who is a phenomenal baseball player. They have Shields pitching, which at least they have a good veteran in there. Saladino is a solid batter. I expect them to finish third and do solid for what they have, and they're going to have prospects coming up. I think the White Sox have put themselves in a position where in a couple of years they really could be competing for the AL Central, which is great for fans in Chicago. This year, however, I don't think they're quite there, but they do have some interesting pieces, and I hope to see them at least have some success with the young guys.
Yeah, I agree with that. I want to see, for them, I want to see pitchers come up and do really well. Like Lucas Giolito is a big-time talent, and he has top-of-the-rotation stuff. And so this is his season where he needs to come up and he needs to make a statement. I think that they have a kid coming up through the system, Michael CUBS, who is just, he's so nasty. I can't even explain to you. Over 100-mile-per-hour fastball consistently, an elite slider. I mean, Michael CUBS is a good pitcher, and I really like his future. So as far as like their pitching goes, I think that they're set up in a really good spot. But like you said, they're just kind of ahead in the rebuild. You know, they're not in a position where this is going to be a breakout year for them.
Right.
One prospect to watch out for is Eloy Jimenez. He is a very, very good outfielding prospect, one of the best prospects in baseball, and they acquired him in the Jose Quintana deal. They made so many good moves as far as strengthening their system that they still have pieces like Jose Abreu and Avistel Garcia, who had a monster season last year. So they still have these pieces on their team that if they want to trade them, they can totally get a huge haul for them. But if they want to keep them, they could keep them long enough, I think, to hit right into that time period when they're going to start attacking, the rest of the AL Central and the rest of baseball.
Absolutely. Yes, I completely agree. So after the White Sox, we're looking at the Royals finally. We can actually hit on those guys now. I'm not too sure how I feel about the Royals right now. They were the talk of baseball a couple of years ago. They had everything going for them, and it has been a swift decline from there. Losing Hosmer, Moustakas, Kane, that's going to really hurt this team. I'm not sure if this team has enough to get them past even fourth in the division. It's going to be an interesting year for them. They still have a few pieces left, but I don't know if it's enough. What do you think?
Yeah, with the Royals, it's hard to believe that this is where they are. But when I see their team, it's barren. It's not the Royals that we know, right? It's not the Royals that made it to back-to-back World Series. The heart of the team, as much as, I said that Hosmer isn't a great player last episode, he was the heart of the team. And you lose him, and you lose Moustakas, and you lose Lorenzo Cain, and suddenly, where is that fun, exciting group that we saw make it to back-to-back World Series? It's not there anymore. And so if I'm looking at this Royals team, I think that they need to sell more. I mean, this team is in full fire sale mode, in my opinion. So next to go needs to be Danny Duffy. Danny Duffy is a really good pitcher that someone could use, a contender could use, and they need to strengthen that farm system more because their farm system isn't very great. They graduated everyone into that championship team. And so right now, I mean, you're looking at the best player on the team, like the heart of the team is Salvador Perez. And I love Salvi, great catcher, but this is just not the Royals team we're used to. And, I even skipped ahead in our standings order because I'm already putting him in fourth place. Like, I feel bad for Kansas City fans now. But this is just kind of how it is when you're a smaller market like that. You have your time to shine, which they did. They had two amazing seasons, making it to back-to-back World Series and then winning the World Series. And now it's going to be another rebuild. But if there's one optimistic thing to look forward to, Royals fans, it's the fact that you've been there, done that. You just did a rebuild, and it brought you a championship. So, yeah, I agree. This team, I don't see them going very far. But the future, I would say, is bright because they have good ownership and they have a good GM behind the wheel.
Absolutely. This team, I have to go back to them. They did a great job coming from being a team that struggled and building up very quickly and doing a great job at getting to a World Series and ultimately winning one. And in a small market team, like you said, that's how it goes. You rebuild, you get there, and then you rebuild again. Unfortunately, that's how it goes in Major League Baseball with small market teams, but they did it and they accomplished their goal. And I think if you're a Royals fan, you have to be happy you got a World Series out of it. That's fantastic. But moving forward, it's going to be a little bit of a wait before they get somewhere.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's because they got teams like the Twins and the Indians to catch. And so when we move on to the Twins, a team that I think shocked everyone last year.
Absolutely.
Coming out of nowhere to win the second wild card, and well done to them. I mean, this team, so many small pieces that came up huge for them last year. Like Irvin Santana posting a monster season for him is a big deal, but it's also a big deal that Irvin Santana is injured.
Yes.
So, you got to see what that's going to do for him. This entire offseason, I've been waiting for the Twins to go out and get that number one starter, to get that Yu Darvish. Jake Arrieta, at the time of this video is coming out, is still a free agent. So, maybe there's a spot there. But the Twins, in my opinion, need a number one guy because I look at their team. I look across the infield with Mauer, Dozier, Polanco, and Sano. I look in the outfield, Rosario, Buxton, Kepler. Like, these are all young players, with the exception of Mauer. These are young players that have come up and really shocked us with their ability to get on base, with their ability to hit the ball out of the ballpark. Buxton playing elite defense.
Yep.
There's a lot to like about this Twins team, but I don't think that acquiring Jake Odorizzi is going to be the one that takes him over the top, because I think a lot of people would agree that last year they overperformed. And so it's tough to expect to do that again. They needed to go out and strengthen more, especially with teams, strengthening all across baseball, but especially in the AL. You've got teams like the Angels strengthening. You've got the Mariners knocking on the door. You've got the Red Sox and Yankees. We'll talk about them later, but they have two elite teams. So the Twins are pretty much firmly in that wild card battle with the Indians in their division. And I just feel like they need to take that next step. Go out and get a big-time starter because, their moves have kind of been a little underwhelming to me. I like Jake Odorizzi. I don't think that he's an amazing pitcher, and you've got Irvin Santana injured. Fernando Rodney.
Yeah, you can't forget about him.
What do you say about Fernando Rodney? Because you signed him to be your closer, and Fernando Rodney seems to be the most bipolar closer in the league, right? He either goes through the worst stretches you've ever seen, or he shows that elite changeup that he has and will lock it down for a little bit. But it's not like I can come on here and say Fernando Rodney is a reliable closer for him. I'm really interested to see what direction they're going to go. I think that signing Addison Reed was a big deal for them in their bullpen, because I think that he'll probably end up taking over the closer role. But this Twins team, they're going to be good. They proved it last year, but are they going to be good enough? That's my question about them.
Yeah, this Twins team is really interesting because no one expected them to do as well as they did. But another thing that surprised me last year, Joe Mauer, as old as he is, he posted, I think, a 300 average, which is fantastic. Joe Mauer is just a great, consistent player, and he's going to be an awesome veteran to have in the clubhouse for this team. Moving forward, though, Irvin Santana's out 10 to 12 weeks. That's really rough to start the season, missing your number one guy. And I completely agree. Going out and getting a guy like Arrieta would be fantastic for them. I think they may have to overpay to land him, and that may be too much for the Twins to go out and do. But the rest of the team is really good. Byron Buxton's fantastic in center field. And Miguel Sano, we've seen it firsthand. He's so good. And he really could challenge the rest of the league out there at third base with his hitting and his defense. This whole team is just built to really challenge the Indians. Do they have enough? Maybe, but I'm not quite sure if they have the starter, like we talked about, to be the team that challenges them yet.
Yeah, and I think that they went out and did a little bit of an insurance move. They went out and just recently picked up Logan Morrison. And I think that, Morrison, who can play first base, he can play DH, he can play a little bit of outfield if you have to. I think that he's more of an insurance for Mauer at his age if Mauer were to go down. Or Sano, there's some off-the-field issues with Sano that have been talked about. And, if he possibly were to get suspended because of it, Morrison could step in there. So I think that was a good pickup. They got him for cheap. Good contract. I like that a lot. But as you said, it does seem to be like they need that one big move. And you said it perfectly. I don't know if they're willing to spend for that one big move. And I feel like that's just kind of where they're at. They do have a pitcher, I will say before we move on. Jose Barrios is elite stuff. And he's a young stud. I expect big things from Barrios, but you don't want to put that number one status on him too young because he hasn't really proven that he can do that yet. And so that's why he needs a veteran to come in. And I don't think that veteran is Irvin Santana, who was the ace last year.
Right.
But as we move on to your favorite team.
Absolutely.
The class of the Central, the Cleveland Indians. And, when I talk about the Indians, there's not much to say. I love this team. I love pitching. And the Indians give me pitching.
Oh, they do.
Corey Kluber. How is it that Corey Kluber still gets slept on by people? Corey Kluber is top 3 pitcher in all of baseball. I'm saying it right now. Corey Kluber is elite. He has 2 Cy Youngs now. That's a huge deal for him that he just gets overlooked too often in the elite pitcher conversation. And I know it's because he's the Klubot, right? Like, he's emotionless. He doesn't give off that bravado, but he is, I think, the most important player on this Indians team because he makes everything tick. When you've got that top of the rotation guy that you go out every 5 days and just dominate, the rest of the team can rally behind that. And the Indians, not only do they have Kluber, but they also have Carrasco and they have Bauer, who stepped up big last year, Tomlin, Clevenger, Salazar. the Indians are ripe with pitching, and that's why I like them so much. But it's so, it's not like that's the only reason the Indians are good, right? Frankie Lindor, Jose Ramirez, Bradley Zimmer, Michael Brantley if he's healthy. There's so much to like about this team. I hope that Jason Kipnis can have a big rebound because I love Jason Kipnis. I think he's a great player. But it's not like if Kipnis struggles, the rest of the team's going to struggle. They have so many pieces around them, and they're a young team too, that I don't see how you can't consider the Indians one of the class teams in baseball right now. My one question will be, can Yonder Alonso replace Carlos Santana's production from last year? I personally think that he can. I like what he did, changing his launch angle. That's a big-time adjustment for someone to make to go into their advanced statistics, see, what they were struggling with. He changes his launch angle and posts up career highs in homers and OPS. So I like what Yonder Alonso is doing, and I think that he can be, almost a mini Santana. And a mini Santana is good enough for the Indians, in my opinion.
Yeah, it really is. I think the Yonder Alonso deal was really fantastic for the Tribe because Carlos Santana ended up getting a $60 million deal with the Phillies, which I think is a terrible move for him in the first place. But $60 million, 3 years, it doesn't really work out for the Tribe. They got Yonder Alonso for much less. I think it was a smart move. And yeah, he really could be a mini Carlos Santana. As for the rest of the team, the rotation's filthy. But one guy to really look on, and everyone's been talking about over the past few years, is Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer had his career best 18 wins. He looked like he finally got that control down. And one problem with Bauer is he has let emotions get to him, and I think he's really starting to get there, and he's doing fantastic. I'd look for him to improve. The rest of the team, one thing that worries me is Frankie Lindor. I love Frankie. He is an MVP candidate, but I really, really need to see the Indians go after his contract, because if they do not, he's gone, and he is gone for a lot of money. He is going to get a huge contract somewhere.
That's interesting. I just want to step in there. That's interesting that you bring that up because it's so often underlooked, the ability to lock up your young stars.
Yes.
And Cleveland, they need this. The city, when they have a team behind them like this, a team that they can rally behind, the city has shown that they really love the Indians and that they love the Tribe and that they'll show up in big numbers and support them. And Frankie is the face of the franchise. So I completely agree. Biggest thing on the Indians card right now as far as their team is locking him up, because the team it doesn't need much improvement.
Right.
The bullpen is elite, the rotation is elite, the lineup is elite. Lock up Frankie. Lock up that beautiful smile, people. Lock him up.
Before we move on from the Indians, there are two other guys I have to hit on. Jason Kipnis, we're 2 games in with him batting in spring training. He's got 3 home runs. So if that stays true this year, I'll be pretty happy. Jason Kipnis really is due for a good season. He's struggled lately, and I really like the guy. I'd love to see him play well. If he plays well, it'll be huge. But Michael Brantley is my concern. He's had so many setbacks over the years. He is great when he's healthy. He's an all-star when he's healthy. But when he's not healthy, it leaves a huge gap in left field. The outfield for the Indians is such a weak spot with Brantley, Zimmer, and Chisenhall. Chisenhall gets moved from third to right field, and now you expect him to be your starting right fielder. He's done a great job, don't get me wrong. But the outfield could use some help. However, I think that the rest of the team that they have is really set to retake the Central, especially in a weak division.
Mm-hmm. And I will say I like Bradley Zimmer a lot. I think that Zimmer is a young star in the making, personally. I think he can live up to his prospect status. But I do agree the outfield it's a little bit of a question mark. But one thing I will say, the Indians brought back Rajai Davis.
They did.
That may be a really small deal in the eyes of most people. But they're kind of bringing the band back together. And I think they just signed Napoli today that we're making this video. So it's like, bring the band back together, maybe get some of that magic that sent him to the World Series, because Rajai Davis was a key part. He'll always be remembered for that home run that he hit in Game 7. But we move on now to the NL Central, because we can't talk about the Indians all day. I'm sorry, Josh. And the NL Central, we start with the Reds. And so for the Reds, I'll just tell you, one sentence: Votto and friends. I mean,
yeah, it really is, and it's sad. But one other interesting guy is Billy Hamilton. This dude's fast, and I love to watch fast players.
Yeah, he is.
He's fun to watch. But yeah, you're so right. It is Votto and friends, and Votto is fantastic. He's put up great numbers his whole career, and there's really nobody else on this team that makes you go, wow. I really would love to see them add another player that made them go, wow, because they used to be there, and now they're not.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Reds. I like the franchise. I love Joey Votto. And I don't want to say, I don't want to be rude to Reds fans, but I just want to see Votto in the playoffs again because he's such an elite player. And as he gets older, he's posting better numbers. I mean, his on-base percentage is ridiculous. I just want to see Votto on the big stage, and this Reds team, unfortunately, it's not going to be there anytime soon. And one thing you mentioned, Billy Hamilton, like Billy Hamilton needs to have the Willie Mays Hayes talk that Lou Brown gave him in Major League. Stop hitting the ball in the air, Billy. Like, you are the fastest player in baseball. Use those wheels. He has got to get on base more. His on base percentage is atrocious. It's under 300. Billy Hamilton has to get on base. He is an elite base runner, like the elite base runner in baseball.
Yeah, he really is.
And he's not utilizing his tool correctly. And because of that, he's not even really a trade chip that the Reds can use correctly at the moment. Like, they want to keep him on the team because there's really no use in trading him. You're not going to get a good return, and then he could break out for some other team. So Billy Hamilton, he's a key to this Reds team to at least be exciting for them. He's got to get better on base skills. He's got to get better bat handling skills. And no, you're not a power hitter, Billy. I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you.
All right, well, next team we're focusing on is the Pirates. Unfortunately, I really think the Pirates are going to be the worst team in the Central. They traded away Kutch, which is sad if you are a Pirates fan. Every Pirates fan, I think, loved Andrew McCutchen. It's sad to see him go. It's an
Not just Pirates fans, bro.
Yeah,
not just Pirates
that's
fans.
true. And it's an end of an era for them. They do have a fan favorite, Francisco Cervelli, and they also have a pretty decent team, honestly, but I really don't know if they have the guy that's going to take them there. I do like Dickerson in left field. I've been a fan of his, and I really expect him to do well in Pittsburgh, but I'm not sure how the rest of the team's going to perform this year.
Yeah, this Pittsburgh team, I actually like the Pirates a lot. And you know this, I follow them, as my NL team. They're not really like a team that I like. I just like a lot of their players. And this Pirates team, they're still going to be decent, but they're kind of stuck in a middle ground right now. They graduated some good talent from their farm system, but then you just traded the face of the franchise. And Andrew McCutchen is not the Kutch that we knew from 5-6 years ago, like we said last episode. But it's so tough to lose the heart of your team, and Andrew McCutchen is the heart of their team. But not just that, they lost Garrett Cole too, and he's the ace of the team. And so losing two big guys like that, well, that's going to really hurt them. But they have talent all across the board. Starling Marte, Gregory Polanco, Josh Bell, Josh Harrison. I like so many players on this team. You mentioned Dickerson, who they just acquired.
Yeah.
Head scratcher there why the Rays would DFA him and then have to trade him in 10 days. And, the Pirates got him so cheap. So their team is still pretty solid all around. I agree that I don't think they're going to be in a playoff spot. I don't know if they're going to finish last in the division. I think that they're going to be just a mediocre team unless some big changes happen. Jameson Taillon is supposed to be this elite pitcher, and it seems like we say this a lot. Every pitcher nowadays has just elite stuff. Can they just figure it out? Can they get their command down? All these different things. Well, Jameson Taillon is exactly one of those guys.
Yeah.
He has elite stuff. And if he can figure it out this year, then he can totally step in Garrett Cole's spot and be that ace of the team. And then I like guys like Ivan Nova. I like Joe Musgrove, who they acquired from the Astros in that trade. I like Colin Moran. I think that they did decent in that trade. I don't think they did great when you're trading an ace. But I think that they did decent, and they got two guys that can come into their major league team and contribute. They also got Feliz from the Astros, a reliever. So I don't think that the Pirates management is as dumb as some people think from these two trades, you know what I mean? But I do think that they're going to be just a middling team this year.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating for them because they should be good with the talent. And when they had Kutch, I'm sure those players thought, we're just like one or two pieces away from being a World Series contender, and now they're just middle of the pack.
Yeah.
Okay, so we move on to the next team in the division, the St. Louis Cardinals, one of the class franchises of baseball, some people would say. So we look at the Cardinals, the big move this offseason for them, Marcell Ozuna, acquiring him in a trade from the Marlins, and personally I think that this is exactly what they needed.
Yep.
And the Cardinals are right there on the cusp of being a legit contender again, and I think that this trade kind of put them in that battle. They will definitely be in the thick of it for a playoff spot, and I wouldn't be shocked to see them get a wild card spot. I don't think they're going to win this division. I don't think that they have enough talent all around, but they've had some pretty big surprises like Tommy Pham last year coming out and playing like a superstar. That's huge for them to have that outfield of Ozuna, Pham, and Dexter Fowler. I mean, that's a really good outfield
really
in baseball. But I think that the big thing that this does is it takes some pressure off of Carpenter, who was expected to be like their number 3 power hitting guy. And Carpenter is much more of a guy that can hit for average. Now, he hasn't improved his launch angle and he's hit for more power, but I think that you take that pressure off him, you bring in a 30-homer guy like Ozuna, and that's going to be really helpful for him. And then at the top of the rotation, Carlos Martinez, just filthy stuff. I mean, you've got Adam Wainwright at the 3 slot now at his age, and he can still get it done. So I like this Cardinals team. I like Paul DeJong, who had a big breakout year last year. Jed Jerko's pretty solid, as is Colton Wong. They have like pretty good guys all across the diamond, but they don't really have like any elite guys. I'd say that Ozuna is the closest thing to an elite player for him right now, and we just have to see if he can replicate his production from Miami, because if he does, this team is going to be in the thick of it for sure.
Oh, I completely agree. I definitely think this Marcell Ozuna trade was perfect for them. They got a player who, like you said, is close to elite. He's very well-rounded. I think he's a great addition to their outfield. And having Dexter Fowler in the outfield helps too. But I really think this team has a pretty solid infield with Jerko, DeJong, Wong, and Carpenter. They're all fantastic. And then don't forget, you still have Yadier Molina behind the dish, who's been there. He's such a great player to have back there. Every Molina, honestly, is. But this team really has a chance to challenge the Cubs. I'm not sure they have enough, but they're really doing a good job at getting there. And if the pitching could step up, I mean, you have Waka and Wainwright, and they're still second and third. And Waka's been developing so well. Behind Martinez, I mean, that's a pretty solid rotation right there in itself. So I expect the Cardinals to do well, and I expect them to really give the Cubs a challenge during the season. And if the Cubs struggle, there's a chance the Cardinals could take it.
Yeah, and someone to watch out for is Miles Mikolas. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, but they acquired him from Japan, and he spent the past couple years in Japan pitching, and he was elite, like one of the better pitchers in Japan. And you've got myself as an Angels fan, I'm expecting big things from Shohei Ohtani, but Mikolas is just as good in Japan, and he comes over and signs a pretty good deal with the Cardinals, and he slots in at their number 4 spot in the starting rotation.
Yeah.
If he can replicate even close to the numbers that he put up in Japan, that's going to be a huge step up for them. So I actually really like that as a wild card deal for him.
I think the next team that really may surprise a lot of people is the Brewers. That's been up and coming and doing so well. They made some great moves this offseason. Nobody is going to think they made a bad move. Getting Yelich and Kane, I thought they were fantastic, and they happened back-to-back, which was pretty amazing to see happen. I remember looking at my dad saying, holy cow.
Got to build that hype.
Yeah, I mean, they did a great job with this. This team is really built to challenge the Cubs in the Central. The fan bases go at it all the time. I mean, you see the Brewers fans have to deal with Cubs fans invading their stadium every year. This team, really, I like Sogard at second base. I've always been a fan of Sogard's. I think he can do a great job playing for the Brewers here. And they still have Ryan Braun out in left field, depending on how well you feel about him. I don't have the best opinion of him, but I'm sure Brewers fans still like him.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
I think this team has a solid rotation. They have Gallardo down in the 5 spot, which is, Gallardo's had some success in the past, and I expect him to maybe he can find a rhythm, but I'm not too sure.
Yeah, the Brewers team, they're right on the door, and they were right on the door last year too. They made huge moves this offseason, as you said. Getting Kane and Yelich, that solidifies their outfield as one of the best in baseball. Braun, Kane, and Yelich across the outfield is just, it's mind-numbing how good that can be for them, because I think that Christian Yelich still has more that he can give.
Oh, yeah.
And and he's such a young elite player. It's going to be a huge addition to their lineup. But the problem is their lineup wasn't the question for me. I think they already have a great lineup. I think that Travis Shaw stepped up in such a big way for him last year. What a great acquisition. He came in and put up huge numbers for them at third base. And then you've got Eric Thames, who they signed from Korea, came in and put up huge home run numbers for him last year at first base. So like power and their lineup and scoring runs wasn't a big problem, but they added two big pieces in Kane and Yelich that can help not only with that, but I think that their defense is underappreciated, which will be a big addition to them. But for the Brewers, my one thing is, and they've been linked to it, so it could still happen, they need a big starter. I don't trust Chase Anderson at the top of the rotation. I like Chase Anderson. He had a good year last year, a surprising year last year. But they still need that ace that can go out and match the Cubs. Mm-hmm. And I'm just not sure if they have that yet. The guy that they need to go get is Jake Arrieta. Personally, I think that they need to go steal the Cubs ace from last year. So when I look at their team, they're like, I want to like them so much. I really do. There's so much to like about this team personally, but they're still maybe one piece away. I do expect them to contend for a playoff spot. They proved that to me last year. I like Zach Davies. I think that Julius Chassin had a good year for the Padres, which was surprising, and they're hoping he can replicate that. But I don't think that that's something that you can really rely on. And if anything, he's going to be your number 3 starter. So just go get that ace, and I'll feel so much better about saying the Brewers are a legit contender to not just win a wild card spot, but to win the division.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And speaking of winning the division, you cannot talk about the NL Central now without the Cubs. The Cubs are just phenomenal in how well they've built this team. Bringing up a young guy like Chris Bryant. They have Rizzo, Baez, Russell, Schwarber, who looks like he got in incredible shape this year.
Shocking transformation.
Despite his struggles last year, the shape he is in is just insane. And then they have Hayward out and right, and Contreras behind the dish. I really like this team. It's tough for me to say that as a Tribe fan, honestly. But the thing that shocks me is the deal they gave you, Darvish. I don't like it at all. I think 6 years is just too much for Darvish. But I think that maybe in the front end of the deal, it'll work out well for them. I think maybe later on, 3 years in, that's when they're going to start seeing a little struggle with Darvish. But I mean, it could work out, and hopefully it does. But I like everything about this Cubs team. I mean, honestly, they should take the Central, hopefully easily for them. But if the Brewers and Cardinals can put up a fight, they may not.
This Cubs team is so stacked, and you look across their roster, and it slips from your mind how good they are because they lost in the NLCS last year. But realistically, this is the team that won the World Series, but maybe even a little better. Each player gets better with Bryant and Rizzo, and you expect Addison Russell to break out and have an all-star-like season anytime soon. You expect Javier Baez to maybe improve his plate discipline, and then he could step into a huge all-star situation. But these guys are still really good, which is what's scary. You know, they have so many good players, but it seems like all of them could take another step, which is what should worry you if you're a fan of another NL Central team.
Yeah.
But what should worry you the most if you're a fan of another NL Central team is that rotation. Yu Darvish, John Lester, Kyle Hendricks, Jose Quintana, Tyler Chatwood, and Mike Montgomery. They have 6 guys that I would kill for on my team. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous, that rotation. And I do agree that I think that adding the 6th year to Darvish's deal is risky, but I think that's what they had to do to get the job done.
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to be a huge step for them. I don't really buy into Yu Darvish's postseason stats as much as everyone else did, especially if he was tipping his pitches, because that's something that could be fixed. But this Cubs team, that rotation, it might be the best in baseball, and then you put that with all the young talent that they have. I can't find a weak position for them, Josh. I really can't.
No.
I mean, Albert Almora Jr. in center field might be the weak link, but even he's a young talent. And they also have Ian Happ, who's already killing it in spring training, and who's a big-time prospect that can play second and the outfield. And they have Ben Zobrist that can play everywhere. They need Jason Hayward to live up to his contract, which admittedly has been a disaster for them. But everywhere else, this team is unbelievable. I think that the big question mark is no more Wade Davis at the back end of the bullpen. And so they signed Brandon Morrow, who was good for the Dodgers. But is Brandon Morrow going to be your closer? I mean, I think that he has the stuff to do it, but he's not Wade Davis. So you are taking a downgrade there in the bullpen. But then they signed Steve Cishek and they signed Brian Dunsing, and it seems like they can just improve everywhere. It seems like where they lose, they fortify immediately. This Cubs team is absolutely elite. This Cubs team is another World Series favorite, and the NL Central should be scared.
Oh, absolutely.
That's all I have to say. They should be scared.
Yeah, I'd be any division this team would challenge in, and I think the Cubs have just done a fantastic job building this team. And I really expect to see a big year from Addison Russell. He's just been such a great player, but he hasn't gotten there quite yet. I could see it happening this season, and I'd look out for Chris Bryant, obviously. He's such an interesting guy because he had all this hype, and I'm expecting him to just 1 year, he's going to blow the doors off the car and just come out with a monster year. And
yeah.
I mean, Javi Baez has developed so well. This infield is just a phenomenal infield and has potential, like you said, to be even better than it is. And that's scary when you consider that this team, basically all of them, won a World Series together.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. But all right, that concludes our episode here. We just went over the AL and NL Central. Please like and subscribe on the video. We're going to cover the AL and NL East next time. But thank you so much for joining me, Josh, and we'll see you next time.